I am going to screen share a presentation, help keep us organized and moving forward. And so give me 1 second and I'll get that started. All right, are we seeing that okay? Okay, very good. So let's see if this will do it. All right, so the kind of run a show today for the parts that reclamation is going to talk about. Obviously, Anderson Ranch Dam Raise project, all things considered underneath that umbrella. When we call it that, I'll give some updates on the general project information. That'll be, design, where our environmental compliance is headed. And then we're going to talk about reservoir operations during construction. I think that's going to be a pretty big part of the discussion today for the storage committee. And then we can round it out with updates to the total project cost estimate. And then from there, open it up for questions, whatever the storage committee would like to do from there. So I thought it was important to help set the stage when I get going here, that a lot of work has been done for several years, and this timeline, which it is updated on our public project website, just helps iterate that once the Idaho Water Resource Board and Reclamation entered into the contract back in November of 2021, that is what set the stage and gave us the authority to move forward with our final design process. That has been underway for several years, and we are nearing completion of final design. So that's really good news that a lot of work's been going on for the last several years. It's been great work by a lot of different experts in their fields, and it's all leading towards 100% design, which right now is slated for, we say spring, but we're pretty hopeful we're going to get it this month. So March, that's the milestone we're aiming to hit, is March for 100% design packages. Environmental compliance, if you remember, that was paused after we had released a draft EIS back in 2019, we paused that mainly to do additional design work and talk about, and do an analysis on the reservoir operations during construction. And so since we're further along in that analysis, we have reinitiated EIS, and the plan right now is to take the draft EIS. We're revising, the specialists are doing all their revisions of their sections, and it's going to lead to a final EIS, final environmental impact statement, which is planned for late 26, maybe early 27. I want to say the last update we gave the board, which was maybe the last meeting or the meeting before, we were saying late 26, 27. So that time frame is still holding true. It just all depends on a little bit of some of the schedule drivers that should break free this month and the month of April. Depending on how they go, that'll determine if the late 26 is still the reasonable timeline for the final EIS. And as a reminder on that one, the newer NEPA regulations that we're operating under do allow us to go directly with the record of decision, and we don't have that 30-day window that we've previously had before. In terms of the Endangered Species Act, ESA consultations, those are fully in progress. That's where we interact with NOAA Fisheries and the Fish and Wildlife Service for those consultations. The NOAA Fisheries one is just a little bit further along, but they're both progressing. On the design, you've heard me talk about, we kind of have basically two main scopes, what we call dam raise and then what we call the reservoir rim. That's the work around the reservoir that has to happen because of the 6-foot raise in the reservoir to mitigate for those impacts around the reservoir. For the dam raise, we were able to complete the 90% design late 25, and the 90% designs looked very similar to what the 60% designs were telling us. Not not obviously all the little details, but the methodology or what we were going to focus on, the main components. And as a quick refresh, that is a modification of the spillway. So removing basically the middle section and the two radial gates of the spillway, and then doing a concrete overlay that is basically its own self-supporting concrete box culvert. That would be the new spillway, two new radial gates. And because of that work, we have to have a earthen cofferdam upstream from the spillway so we can remain with our reservoir operations during construction. We're going to talk about that a little bit here in a couple of slides. Also, we have some very important work to do at the left and right abutments to basically do some foundation prep and tie into some existing internal cutoff features of the facility. And then through the embankment itself, doing some subsurface geotech type work to make that embankment watertight for the additional 6 feet of reservoir. And I'd mentioned it, but we are anticipating 100% designs for that finishing this spring. For the reservoir rim projects, those are a little further along. That's the work we have to do around the reservoir, mainly on some recreation sites, some erosion control, roadway protection areas, some erosion control around two of the bridges. That's Pine Bridge and Lime Creek Bridge on that Pine Featherville side. And then there's an airstrip we're going to regrade because the one end would get inundated a little bit. So we're going to regrade that out and raise that up and flatten it out. And then there is a fish passage project that was also identified during the feasibility study. That's part of the work. And that design work has reached 100% design. We also, along with our newer iterations of design, we also prepared new government construction schedule estimates. And for this one, the dam raise, we're still looking about a little over 4 years after notice to proceed. And that the important thing I wanted to highlight today is that our experts still feel that you would need close to 3 years to do the spillway work. There's just a lot of concrete, a lot of placement, metal type placement and operators for the radial gates. It's just, it's a lot of work. And so they still feel like that'll take the full 3 years. If you remember, I think it was either 60 or 30% design. We thought we could do some things and get it done in 2 years. That just based on the new iterations of design, we still feel most confident that it would still take 3 years to do that overlay work. And then the reservoir rim, we do consider that a shorter schedule estimate, but it will fit within that same dam raise construction time frame because you have to have both of them complete before you can fill the new space. So we would still do the reservoir rim work within that same 4-year window. And just highlighting that we want to do our best to coordinate with the Forest Service who manages the lands around the Anderson Ranch and make sure we do our best to minimize recreation impacts to the best of our abilities. Doesn't mean we're all going to be able to do that fully, but that's our goal and that's what we're planning and coordinating with them on.
Mr. Barker, Chris, on the rim projects, are there certain projects that, because of they need to be sequenced in a way to deal with the work that's going on in the dam, or can they all go on simultaneously?
Good question, Mr. Barker. The one that comes to mind is Elk Creek Boat Ramp, just because there might be some overlaps between the contractors using that space during construction. But other than that, most of the reservoir rim projects are either on that north side or up around Pine Featherville. And so we don't anticipate too much overlap of contractors in one concentrated area. Now, we do recognize, and we're coordinating this with Forest Service, anyone that we can, the highway districts. We do recognize that some of those roads around the reservoir and near the dam are not open in the wintertime, or it's difficult to pass those. And so the sequencing of the two schedules, the government, we're doing that the best we can to to estimate that out and see how those things overlap and see where there would be conflicts or no conflicts, and having our best estimate of that. Now, that doesn't lock a contractor into not preparing their own, schedule and having their own means and methods and unique ways of doing it, but it would still, our schedule would compare with theirs when that point is right. Good question. And for both designs and scopes of work, we are using the same reservoir operations curve and specification sections for both of those specifications. And at this point, I will turn it over to Pete Cooper to talk about reservoir operations during construction.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Board, members of the board. My name is Pete Cooper. I work for Reclamation here in our regional office. I'm in the water management group, and normally I do real-time operations, but I also help on studies such as this one. Thanks for having me here today to talk about this important piece of this project. It's been a high priority of ours to look at this reservoir operations during construction and analyze that to make sure that potential impacts are we want to make sure there's no impacts to our existing space holders. So what I've shown here, first of all, is just to set the stage, just a couple images here. So on the left side is an image of, this is an aerial view of the spillway area up at Anderson Ranch. It's what it will look like during the construction period. So the spillway is located kind of at the top left of that picture. And then the red area there that's highlighted, that's going to be a cofferdam that has to be placed in front of that spillway structure during the construction period. And that's because, as Chris mentioned, there's going to be a lot of work going on that spillway, lots of concrete work, things like that. And so they need that area to be isolated from the reservoir and in a dry condition there. So that red area is the cofferdam. On the right side is an image showing kind of the numerous different projects that are going to be occurring around the rim of the reservoir, like Chris talked about. And I'm going to show a couple things on the next plot that will bring those in. So yeah, go ahead and. Okay, so during construction, to accommodate this construction of the Anderson Rays and those rim projects, we're going to need to keep the reservoir below certain elevations. And so what I've shown here is a graph of the reservoir elevation on the y-axis, the vertical axis there, and then some relevant elevations that we'll manage to during construction. So on the top there is a red line. That's the normal full pool elevation of Anderson Ranch Reservoir as it stands today, 4196 feet. Down there farther, you'll see some other lines. That blue line is the top of inactive space. That essentially between that blue line and the red line is where the water sits that our irrigation space holders have for irrigation. And then between that blue line and the yellow line is the top of dead space. That's our Anderson power head space that's used to help spin the turbines, the power generating turbines there at the reservoir at our generating facility. Along the bottom axis, the horizontal axis, that's the time period as we move through construction. So you'll see water year 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 to kind of match up with those time periods that Chris mentioned for the project. We'll have that cofferdam in place for approximately 3 water years. And so the black line here, this is what we're calling our construction restriction curve during construction. So that will essentially be the upper limit of where we'll be able to keep the water surface elevation at the reservoir during construction. You see kind of at the start of that black curve and at the end of that black curve, there's two kind of deeper drawdowns. And those serve two purposes. The first purpose is to install and remove the cofferdam. So the first deep drawdown is where we will install the cofferdam to be able to do the work on the spillway throughout the construction period. And then the late drawdown will be to remove that cofferdam. So we need to draw the reservoir down to those elevations, which is approximately 42 and a half feet below full is how far down we'll have to be. And I have this shown just to show you that we don't have to draft the reservoir empty to be able to put that cofferdam in. We're just working within that top 42 and a half feet of the reservoir. And the reservoir typically is about 156 feet deep. So we're kind of in the top quarter of that reservoir. Those deep drawdowns are also, there's a few projects around the rim that require a deeper drawdown to be able to get down and do the work needed. So Al, to your, Mr. Barker, to your point, yes, these sequences, the construction is going to be sequenced to take advantage of those deeper drawdowns. When they need to do those deeper reservoir projects around the rim, presumably they would do that during those deeper drawdown periods. And then once we get the cofferdam in place, we no longer have to keep the reservoir so low. We'll have the cofferdam in place. The reservoir can rise and fall up on that cofferdam. It will be watertight. It'll be essentially, it's designed to be essentially a dam. It can hold back water, and that's its purpose. And so we will be able to store water up on that cofferdam. And you see the black curve rises up to between elevations 4180 feet and 4190 feet. So between about 16 feet from full to 6 feet from full. And again, those elevations were all coordinated with our design team to ensure that there was enough time throughout the project and enough depth of those drawdowns to be able to do all of the work that needs to get done. The jogs up to 4190 feet are during the spring period, the spring and early summer period. And that's for another reason, that because we will not have a spillway during this construction, so we'll have the cofferdam in front of the spillway during construction, so that spillway will be out of service. Because of that, our hydrology engineers in Denver, they did a flood risk analysis to determine, because we don't have that spillway, we're going to need to keep some empty space up in Anderson Ranch to be able to accommodate a large scale flood event. So typically we would use the spillway during that type of event and be able to pass whatever flow we needed to through the spillway. But because we won't have a spillway, we need to maintain a buffer in the reservoir to be able to capture that big inflow event. And we're talking very rare. This would be like a 1 in 1,000 year event type of thing. But for dam safety concerns, that's the level of protection that we needed to provide. So that elevation is 4190 feet, 6 feet from full. And that's a really important elevation because generally in the spring and summertime, when we have the water available in the basin, we obviously like to fill this reservoir. We like to get it as full as we can get it. But because we don't have that spillway available and we need to maintain that flood risk protection, we can't fill the top 6 feet of the reservoir. So that's a really important elevation. But in total, that black curve allows us the time to get this project constructed. Let's see. So through all of this, a really high priority of ours is we want to ensure that our existing space holders are not affected by this construction. And so we've done some analysis on this, on what reservoir operations would look like during construction. We can go to the next slide here, please. Okay, so we've analyzed this we have what's called a riverware model, and it's a model that allows us to analyze historic reservoir inflows with different operations. And what we've done is we've used that model to analyze current operations versus operations that will occur during construction. And this helps us understand what type of years do we need to be concerned about during this construction. what type of years could potentially affect our space holders. So what this graph shows is the Boise Reservoir System fill percentage on the y-axis. That's the vertical axis there. That's the how full the reservoirs get. On the horizontal axis, the x-axis, that's the storage difference between operations without the construction and operations with the construction. So this tells us a couple things through our analysis. And what our analysis is showing is that in years when the reservoir system does not fill all the way, there's no effect to the space holders in that type of year. So on the storage difference, what you can see here is as we go from 0 to 100% of full on the left side, on the left axis, all of those blue dots represent a storage difference between the non-construction scenario and the construction scenario, and they all line up at 0. So what that's saying is if the reservoirs aren't going to fill, there's no difference in how much water is stored up in the reservoir system. And that's a good result. Essentially, we can't just look at Anderson Ranch alone. We have 3 reservoirs in the Boise Reservoir System, Lucky Peak, Arrow Rock, and Anderson Ranch, and they work as a system. So just because we can't fill all the way at Anderson doesn't mean necessarily that there's less water in the reservoir system. It just means that that water is captured somewhere else in the system. And so in those years when we don't fill the reservoir all the way, our analysis is showing there's no change in how much water is in the reservoir system. It's just stored in different places. So that's a good result. The second thing this graphic tells us is that in years when we do see a difference, it's when we fill the reservoir system. So those blue dots kind of on the upper right side, so those are saying that there's a difference between the construction scenario and the non-construction scenario, but they're all the way up at that top of that graph. That yellow line is full reservoir system. And so what it's saying is that, yes, there is a difference. And essentially what it is that we can't fill that top 6 feet in the spring because we have that flood risk management restriction up at Anderson Ranch. And so, so those are the type of years that have the potential to have a difference of stored water in the system, are the good years when the reservoir system fills. And so, so what does that mean? You know, the primary goal here is to ensure that existing space holders are not going to be affected by that. Just because we see that difference, we want to make sure that our existing space holders are not impacted. And so we're continuing to evaluate how our existing operations fit into this construction scenario, including how we pass flow augmentation under these conditions. And also we're continuing to think through ideas on, if needed, how we could get wet water for our existing space holders in the event it's needed. And as of right now, we're continuing to engage with our water users. We've had great engagement with our water users so far on this, and we're continuing to look at how that's going to work and how our existing operations, like I said, including how our flow augmentation operation fits into this. And as we continue to work through that and ensure that we come up with a solution that's not going to affect our existing space holders. And we're confident we're going to be able to come up with that solution. We're continuing to work through that. And as we do, we'll continue to keep this committee up to date on the progress there. So I'll pause there. That was a lot of information. Happy to answer any questions if there's questions on any of that.
Board Member Barker has a question, Pete.
Mr. Cooper, on your graph, how many years, or maybe not how many years, what's the percentage of time that you get 100% fill versus not filling? So how often does that historically occur, and over what period of time have you modeled that?
Yeah, so this model goes from it's a 30-year period through 2018, and I believe that's 1988, I believe, through 2018. 1989 through 2018 is the model period. And what we found is it's about a 50%, about 50% of those dots line up on zero, showing there's no change to the amount of water stored in the reservoir system during the construction period. About 50% of those dots fall on that right side, showing there is a difference, but the reservoirs fill. So it's about a 50-50 probability in our modeling.
So in that 30-year period, we have some pretty big water years and some pretty bad water years, so.
We do, yeah. So 1987 through 1994, 1993 was a big year, but that general kind of 6-7 year period was a really, really bad year. So we have 1989 through 1994 in that period. We have 2001 through 2004, which were very big drought years. And then we have really big years in there. We have the late 1990s. We have 2017, 2011, some really big water years in that mix. So we're confident that that model period, and it's the same model period that was used for the dam raise for the longer term once this is constructed, kind of the feasibility of that. So uses that same period and includes a reasonable range of outcomes.
Pete, while we've got you stopped for a minute, any of you board members online have a question for Mr. Cooper?
Yeah, I'm good, Brian. Thank you.
So not hearing any, Pete, my question, I guess, the year that was the full 37,000 shortage, was that a real wet year, 97, say, or do you know?
Yeah, so when you look at the results, all of those blue dots are good water years, and I have a table showing what years those were, and you'll pick them out. It's like, okay, yeah, there's 2017. I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head what year that 37,000 acre foot number was, but all of those years were good water years. Yeah, I could find that out for you.
And just for the audience, our goal is to be able to mitigate if we had 4 of those worst years, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. So the hydrologic,
Great years.
Yeah, very good
Yeah.
years, I mean.
Yeah. So the hydrologic conditions that we get during this construction are going to be key on understanding how this will ultimately unfold. So if we get 4 drought years or 4 really dry years in a row, we're going to be on the left side of that graphic. We're not going to have any change in the storage in our reservoirs. They're likely going to be very, very low, and Anderson construction is just going to be happening up there, and we probably won't even think about it from my end. It'll be just happening, and we're going to be storing water wherever we can in the system. It'll just be in Anderson and Lucky Peak and Arrow Rock. So those, from an operational standpoint, will be easy years. Obviously, I'm crossing my fingers that it's wet. I like wet years. They're easier than I don't like to see drought years. So the wet years are when we would see that difference. But again, the good news is that the reservoir system will be essentially, it will be full except for that top 6 feet up at Anderson. And so if we get 4 of those in a row, it's going to be much more active, obviously, with operations. And those are the years where we'll fill everything, and the only empty space up there will be up at that top 6 feet of Anderson Ranch. So those are the years we're concerned about. Obviously, we want to ensure that there's no effect to our space holders and to the water users in the valley because of that. And so that's the part we're really focusing in here on, and I'm confident we're going to come to a good solution on how to solve that.
So just to follow up, so is there any impacts to natural flow users? It doesn't change the way you release floodwaters or anything?
No, yeah. When the water master calculates the natural flow for the basin to distribute that to the water rights, that that won't have, what's happening in the reservoirs will have no effect to that. The water master will take that into account in the water right accounting. And it'll simply, it'll take into account how much water is being stored in the reservoirs and inform how much natural flow is available. But yeah, there will not be any effect to natural flow because of the construction.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Parker?
Mr. Cooper, on the mitigations piece, you said you all are working on it and having conferences with the water users. Are you able today to share what your proposals are, and if not, when do you think we'll be able to hear those?
Yeah, Mr. Parker, great question. Today, I'm not ready to discuss that fully. We are engaging, and we've had great engagement with your staff and with the water users, even as recently as today. This is a high priority for us to figure this out. Today, I'm not quite ready to unveil that plan, but we are working hard at it, and I'm confident it's going to be, it's coming soon. I can't give you an exact date, but I can assure you we are working very hard on this, and it is a high priority to get this resolved so that we can all go into this project confident that we have a good solution to ensure that our water users are not affected by this.
And so, Mr. Chairman, I think the point for all of us to keep in mind is that we'd be looking for water in good water years. We're not looking for water in drought years in order to do this mitigation, right? So there may be some opportunities to obtain water that wouldn't be available in a year like this, unless the rain keeps going for the next 40 days and 40 nights.
Yes, you're correct, Mr. Barker. And also what we're looking at as well is how our current operations fit into this construction scenario, including our flow augmentation program. How does our flow augmentation operations that we currently operate with in our current system, how is that going to happen during the construction period? And that may provide some solution there as well. So we're looking at all options. We want to come up with a really solid option to make sure that our water users are not going to be impacted by this.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, how much do you typically release out of the Boise for flow augmentation in wet years?
Yeah, good question. I don't have that number in front of me, but we do have about 41,000 acre feet of uncontracted space in Lucky Peak that we use for flow augmentation. So on wet years or on good water years, that space generally refills, and we use that whenever that's available. So on a good water year, we have at least 41,000 acre feet. Generally, we're always open to willing buyer, willing seller rentals from the Boise system. In recent years, that's been, Daniel's here, he could probably help me, but maybe around 3,000 acre feet. So some years, 2017, I think there was around 20,000 acre feet of rentals for flow augmentation. So it varies. And then at times we may need to use our Anderson Ranch Powerhead space for flow augmentation. Typically that's on a year when the upper snake may be in a drier condition, and the upper snake above Milner is in a drier condition and maybe not able to provide as much flow augmentation. So there are times, and that can happen in a dry year or a wet year. So that can add another 36,000 acre feet or so. So generally we're talking between about 40,000 and 80,000 acre feet of flow augmentation released from the Boise system.
Could I trouble one more question, Mr. King?
One more from Mr. Barker.
That's it. You know how lawyers are. Just one more question. So when the Boise is wet, is it typical that Payette is wet and the upper snake is wet, or is it, and when you're finding, particularly when you're looking for flow log water, are you finding that the southern Idaho sources of flow log are all generally the same, or do we have inconsistencies among the basins?
There's a very strong correlation between water supply conditions in the Boise and in the Payettes. Those two are very, very similar. Generally, if we have a dry year in the Boise, it's also a dry year in the Payette and vice versa. The Upper Snake is a much more complicated system. It's a 9 reservoir system. Even in good water years, you can have a situation where you don't refill the Upper Snake above Milner system. And so there's I would say less of a correlation to the Boise Payette compared to the Upper Snake above Milner. It's just a much more complicated system.
Thank you, Peter.
Other board members anymore, or we'll let Pete continue and Chris? Okay, I think you guys are good to continue what you're.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thanks, Pete. All right, very good questions. I have basically 2 more slides, and that is the updates to the total project cost estimate. So I wanted to put this slide on the screen to just kind of refresh our memories and look and see how reclamation, and it's probably also an industry standard too, but with my whole career with reclamation, how we go about our cost estimates. And when we entered into the partnership with the Idaho Water Resource Board, that was during the feasibility study analysis, that level of cost estimate. And then when I mentioned the November 2021 contract that we entered into, that's when we started doing the final design. And reclamation calls these % final design cost estimates. And so with our 90% design that we received last fall and some updates to our, what we call our non-contract cost estimates, that's mainly our labor, if we had to do any field explorations to inform the design, travel, anything that's not a construction contract related cost, we've done our best to also update those. And so this graphic is showing that we are still progressing through cost estimates, but it is getting more and more refined. And we are becoming more confident in our designs. So this level of cost estimate has less design contingencies, and we're getting more and more confident in our procurement strategies. And so as you continue to go through these stages of cost estimate, you adjust your contingencies accordingly. And we will have, what I'm going to show you next slide will be this, what I'd consider a 90% level total project cost estimate. Coming up when we enter into the project's acquisitions phase, that's when we hand it over to our federal contracting officers to work on the solicitation packages. That's when we would get a pre-validation of funds. And that's what they would look to, of what we would need to verify for funding for the project, to be able to award construction contracts. And then when we get right up to the bid opening part, or right before bid opening, that's when we'd have our final independent government cost estimate. And then you would also have construction contingencies. That's that last line there, and that block of 4 of those there. And we can talk about that a little bit, about how planning for construction contingencies is a smart thing to do with your project funding, with this project funding. So this just kind of gets right down to it. This is the last slide, and then definitely open it up for questions overall, but obviously dive into the cost estimates as much as we need to. The last reported total project cost estimate, and this is looking back to November of 21, to present day, and looking into the future, what we would think, to get through the full project. And right now I project that going into the start of 2032. The last estimate we reported to the board was 127.8 million. And that also included water supply mitigation. There's also some power utility power pole, some infrastructure around the reservoir rim needs to be moved and some things that just come together and brought it all to that. So where it's at now is 149 million. Designs have taken us a little bit longer than when the last cost estimate was completed. And then our cost estimates for the dam raise and the reservoir rim did go up slightly since the last one. So that 149 encompasses a whole lot of different facets of the cost estimate, but that's the new total project cost estimate. And I'll just drive home, that doesn't cover construction contingencies that we would like to continue to coordinate and work with the board on planning for those. If you look at if we look at our current authorized funding to date, the Idaho Water Resource Board have, and I might be off just a little bit here, I didn't fully check in like I should have with Cynthia and Justin, but 112.5 million is what I was tracking for authorized funds to date for this facet of the project. And then the rest of that was in-kind costs that were reported. If you remember, the contract allowed for reporting of in-kind costs. And so that's what that tries to show, is that right there. And then the federal funding, the contract mentions 10 million for the WIN Act funding, the federal funding side of that. And then about a year and a half ago, we were able to receive about 7 more million from the bill, or the IJA, oftentimes what we call it, act for storage, for federal storage. And so that's where we come up with the 17 million. And I can respond to any kind of questions that teed off of that, but in terms of our slides, this is the last slide.
So board members, any questions on that revised cost estimates?
Chairman.
Mr. Parker?
This isn't a question, this is a request for our staff and reclamation. We need to do an addendum or update the contract, make sure that additional $7 million is part of our agreement. We don't want that to disappear. We've seen lots of people with promises from the federal government see their grants and loans disappear. And so we want to make sure we get that tied down. And I don't know if this is the right moment, Mr. Chairman, but do we want to talk about how we're going to fund the rest of the state's water board's contributions to this?
Mr. Chairman, Al might suggest that that be teed up for a finance committee in the next couple of weeks for discussion at that meeting. In light of potentially some other funding actions that the finance committee will be considering.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that's great. I was hoping Joanne would solve that problem for us.
We'll put that on her to-do list.
And I should note, Tim, that Pat McMahon and Dale Van Stone are on also now. So any other questions from the board members who are not here in the room?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Ms. Cole-Hansen, go ahead.
So the 149 million does not include contingencies. What % of contingencies should we be considering for the completion of this project? And I guess that's a question to the Bureau of Reclamation.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Cole-Hansen, without looking at the nitty-gritty details of the cost estimate, it does include some contingencies like design contingencies, procurement strategy contingencies. But what it doesn't include is a 20% construction contingency. There's a lot of different percentages that go into the contingencies. And so the one that I'm highlighting the most is this: if you were to put 20% on the contract cost estimates to get you through any kind of modifications or amendments, change orders, differing site conditions during construction. That's the one I'm highlighting is not wrapped up into this 149 million.
Okay, thank you.
But it does still include, I might be wrong in this, but I think one of them has a 7% design contingency and the other one was 10 or something like that, just because of the stage of their design. But those numbers are just as an example.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff. We'll probably have a better idea of what contingencies need to be added in when we get the 100% design information back.
And so Chris, I guess, chairman question, so it looks like your 17 million gets you to the 11% or maybe a little more for the estimates right now. If there are construction contingencies, they'd be shared at that same 89 and 11%.
Yes, that is correct. That going forward until we get closer to substantial completion, the cost allocation would be that 89% for shared costs of the project. Now, working to Mr. Barker's point about updating the contract, the current iteration of that mentions that, above and beyond, it just has the 10 million, which I know, like we've talked about, will need to be amended. Just has the 10 million, and then anything above and beyond that would be the board's responsibility, but the board can request for additional federal funding like what was done in the past. So just with that being said, I would think that we would handle it the same way if needed. Yeah, good question.
Mr. Chairman, Chris, did you say that Gail and Gary was going to join us? Maybe we can.
Yes, Mr. Barker. Gail, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Yes, she is, Mr. Barker. Did you have a question or?
Yeah, the question is, what's the mechanism that you were just referring to for modifying?
Did you hear that, Gail?
Yeah, I did. I'd have to look into that. I think we looked into that before. Maybe we did it before to see if we had to modify that contract or not. And to be honest, I'm not sure. So I'll have to look at that. Because didn't that come up before when we knew it was going up?
Mr. Chairman, Gail, I don't
Yeah.
remember whether it did or didn't.
Because I was pretty sure I sent a letter. We had a letter that went over to you explaining that, and I'd have to look back in my file and see. But I do know I can do that before if you're going to have that finance committee meeting, we can look back at what we did and see if we need to send another letter or figure out what to do.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff. So if we see that the amount of money that Reclamation has allocated to this project is insufficient, could we make that request as soon as we see that and let Reclamation go through the process of attempting to secure the additional funding through the budgeting process of the federal government? Or do we have to wait until the project is complete before we do that?
Well, I would think we could do it now. So Chris, are you saying that we have not, there's not enough money in the FY26 to obligate our amount?
No, Gail, what I'm saying is we have at the current total project cost estimate, 149 million with that. So that doesn't include construction contingencies. The federal 17 million that we have does cover that. Now,
With the contingencies?
not construction contingencies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I can't remember what the breaking point is there, the tipping point in terms of the cost estimate increasing. And I can work with you,
So-
Gail, to kind of help you see the numbers.
Okay, so why don't we, maybe we could come to your finance committee and present that if it's gonna be in a couple of weeks or something. We can get that work done before that meeting.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to add then, Chris, or are we ready to move on to the item C there, the new storage contracting process?
That is it from me. So thank you.
You don't want to do the contracting for us?
I will sit back and listen. Thank you.
Okay, so for this contracting, IWRB new storage contracting process, and everybody need to understand, this is really in its infancy. We know that we're gonna have a lot of people interested. We know there's gonna be more than one kind of beneficial use. We know that DCMI might very likely be the biggest request. But as far as process, we want to, we're going to want it to be very transparent, a lot of public input. And we've got some time to do it, but nevertheless, it's, a lot of questions. We need to start having some answers. And I think I'll turn it over to Justin and Cynthia to start on those answers.
Well, thanks for having me. No promises on answers, but we can get started. So our objective today with you all is just to continue engaging to talk about some of these storage allocation methods and start working through what those decision points could be. But before we get going, just a couple of things to highlight for you all. Negotiations to obtain water rights 63 through 4753 are ongoing. We've made really great progress. We do have a status conference next week. After that, we'll be able to bring you some more updates. Something I did want to highlight, based on a legal review, we would propose no permanent sales of water. And so the entities, through whichever process you decide to go with, would act as an agent for the board, using the water on your behalf. And then the last thing I wanted to hit was that contract terms and duration will be discussed at a future meeting. We thought it was just a little too much to try and decide all at once right here, but that it will be talked about. So based on feedback from the committee in previous meetings, we've kind of lined out two different methods for you to consider. First, starting off is the auction method. So we would propose this to be similar to the Idaho Department of Lands auctions, auction to the highest bidder. Something I did want to bring to your attention is that auctions could be structured in blocks of water or by beneficial use, as you all determine. Multiple auctions could be held for different beneficial uses. There's some flexibility there, is what I'm trying to get to. The other option that we've put together for you to consider is a direct contract method. So kind of the opposite of that. We would work with interested parties just to directly contract based on, we can structure this similar to an RFP or a grant process with criteria developed ahead of time so that people could submit applications.
Okay, so, and Justin, you didn't put in here, but we'd also anticipated that there will be different lengths of time in the, blocks of water and different lengths of time for the contracts. So there might be, price might be higher for longer term or cheaper for shorter term or unknown future needs that we have to be aware of. So, but anyway, I'll open it for questions to Justin from board members, either here in the room or online.
Chairman, I think Justin's got, excuse me, some more explanation of the two different methodologies.
Yes. Actually, I was going to walk you all through some pros and cons of both methods, and then.
Okay, sorry, I didn't realize we weren't quite ready for the questions yet, so you might answer them all.
So starting off with the auction method, a couple of things I wanted to highlight here. This method, based on what we're finding, looks like it'll maximize revenue recovery to support future projects for you all. It would eliminate the need to develop and administer a ranking and scoring criteria. And it would allow you all, give you the flexibility to define how you want to auction that water, whether it's by beneficial use or in blocks or things along those lines. And then just this last one is kind of the same thing I've been getting to, is the flexibility for multiple auctions based on beneficial uses. Some cons here is that it does reduce your ability to make policy-driven allocation decisions, because the intent here would be to auction this off to the highest bidder. And that leads right into that second bullet point, is that the water would go to the highest bidder without public interest considerations. And then this last bullet point is that it may be something worth considering, is that it could constrain participation by entities based on their financial capacity or debt obligations. The point I'm getting to here is that you may accidentally exclude people if it were to go to the highest bidder.
So, Mr. Chairman, but Justin, before you move on from the auction process, you said you looked at what Idaho Department of Lands has done. Could you explain how that would, just give us a little bit more background on how that would work if we were to do something similar?
We may have to defer that to Anne.
Oh, good, we get councils, that's even better.
So I think it's just conceptually running an auction as the Department of Lands has done for their cottage site issues, in which, it's a regular auction situation, just like you would always think. You could have a minimum bid, and then folks would come in and make bids, and essentially, it goes to the highest bidder. Perhaps unlike the Department of Land situation, there may be opportunities here to structure auctions in, as Justin was saying, different blocks of water. There could be an auction, say, for irrigation users, for municipal users, so that you have like entities bidding against like entities. So there may be some flexibility within the auction idea to target different groups, different beneficial uses. Or alternatively, you could hold one big auction, blocks of water, and everybody comes in and bids at the same time for the water. So there's different ways we could structure it, but conceptually, it's an auction like you would think of any other auction.
And Mr. Chairman, and if we do an auction, you can set a minimum, right? But if somebody bids over the minimum, then you have to sell it to them, right?
That would be the
At
concept.
that price.
Yes.
And it seems like it also, we're not gonna have somebody standing out on the courthouse steps next door here with a hammer saying how much you bid with you doing. How does it work? Is it an online? Is it a?
So I believe for the Department of Lands, it is an auction. They have an auctioneer and people come in and bid. It's like you would conceptualize any other auction. So there is at least within the state, kind of a bit of a blueprint for how to do those types of auctions.
But if the board decides that we're going to put out 1,000 acre feet for a 20-year period with a minimum bid, somebody comes in and bids more than that, then it's gone, right? For that 20-year period. And then we would have to say, well, here's what the terms of the contract that you're going to sign as part of this auction. So all that would have to be done before you can do an auction, right? You can't just say, okay, here's how much you're going to pay us. Oh, and now here's the contract later.
Right. Yeah, we would anticipate that people would want to see the terms of the contract before they started to bid. Yes.
But we would have to do that. wouldn't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Other questions for Ann while we've got her, or we'll turn it back to Justin again for option 2, I guess.
But we're not gonna let her go. So if anybody has further
Yeah,
questions.
if we could, Ann, why you're here, because I had at one time we were thinking about possibly selling part of the water, and the legal opinion was that we couldn't do that. And that was because of ARPA and other causes, or?
Yeah, that's right. Because of the kind of the terms of the federal funding, we can't divest ourselves of the property interest in the water. And so the legal analysis that Megan Carter did for you all was that we could contract out, we lease the water out, but we can't full on sell it as a piece of property. The other layer to that as well is that we want to create an agency relationship with the people who will be beneficially using the water. And so it will be structured different than some of the Bureau contracts where people, I think some people are familiar with the Pioneer decision and the way the underlying space holders have equitable title in the water, and the Bureau holds nominal title. We're going to avoid creating that situation by writing into the contract that the end beneficial user is using the water as the agent of the Water Resource Board. And that will also help you all retain full control of the property interest of the water.
So like the LU ranching case.
Yes, correct. It's very similar to a rancher using water on federal land. It's the same concept, yes.
And that would be true regardless of whether we do it in the auction program or an RFP or a grant type program, right?
That's correct. Those will be kind of baseline terms that we'll need to have no matter which direction you go with the process, in terms of which process you choose.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff. Wouldn't it be akin to like the water supply contracts that Reclamation has with water users in California?
Jeff, I'm not probably familiar enough with those to know, to speak to that. Yeah.
Jeff, you're not talking about the ones that they can't deliver because of ESA reasons.
No, I'm just talking about in general. The users in California don't have space holder contracts like Reclamation water users in Idaho have. Reclamation just agrees to like supply them so many acre feet per acre or a block of so many acre feet of water for use within the boundaries of their place of use, as I understand it.
And if I may just follow up on what Jeff just said, just to clarify, another point is that the contracts will be for space, not water.
Okay.
Okay, I believe, Justin, you have another slide describing the RFP method. So
Getting back to some more pros and cons. So with this method, it would give you all an assessment of the current basin water needs before you started executing contracts. You're able to see the full picture of the demand. It would preserve your discretion to allocate storage water based on policy if you went this direction. And it could expand participation opportunities based on financially constrained entities. So kind of the opposite of the auction method, they're able to participate if you so choose. But getting to the cons of this method, so it is interest driven, and so based on what we're seeing, it could limit the ability of you all to maximize through your recovery of project costs. Another con that we've run into is that it would require the development of a clear and defensible ranking and scoring criteria prior to accepting applications for this water. And that it would need a more robust, and kind of tying back to that second point is this third one, a more robust process to make sure everything's transparent and equitable and as fair as possible. And so moving on from here, really this is a wrap up slide, and I wanted to hammer some of these home. So with the auction method, based on on what we're finding. There's the opportunity to maximize potential revenue recovery, but the water would go to the highest bidder. It would eliminate the need for project-specific ranking and criteria, but it would limit your discretion to direct the water based on policy. And then just something, again, kind of building on what Ann was getting to, it would allow you all to conduct separate auctions based on beneficial uses with different block sizes and however you choose to structure that. But getting to the contract method, there may not be the highest generation of acre foot revenue, and we would need the development of a clear and ranking scoring criteria, but it would allow you to kind of guide where that water goes based on the state water plan or current water policies. And so with that, really what we're getting to here is it's kind of a proposed decision point for you all to consider and something for us to take back. Is there a preferred method or route that seems most appealing? And then we'd be happy to start doing some more research down that road.
So I guess I'll open it for questions to board members, either in the room or online.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mark.
Go ahead, Mark.
Is there, thank you. Our responsibility, I think, is a little different than the land board in that we're not tasked with maximizing the return on this investment. So couldn't we do some of both of this in terms of contracting some directly on a rank system, as well as making some of it available for auction and find out what the market really is on a blended basis?
We'll give that one to Ann again, Mark.
I mean, I think that we could look into that. It does, I think that probably presents more complications as staff and I were thinking about it, to try to do a blended method like that than just choosing one way or the other. It's sort of like you would have to both set up an auction system and do all of the criteria laying out and all of the direct contracting stuff as well. So it's not that we couldn't do that, but I think it would be perhaps more complicated. Maybe Cynthia or Justin want to add into that.
Mr. Chairman, a follow-up or additional question to that. And we're not tasked with maximizing the return on this investment like the landlord is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And that is a good point. So I think one of your decision points that you can consider today is that important to you? Do you want to maximize the amount of money that you're getting on, kind of return on investment in this big project? Or are you looking to, take something less than the full amount that you could get because you're making policy decisions that are driving that? So I think that's a good way to start thinking about it.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff. I don't think the auction necessarily maximizes. I think if we can determine when it's time to contract what the value of water is, and there's a lot of things that we can point to determine that value, we may get a greater value by setting a price. Just because somebody bids a price and nobody bids higher doesn't mean that's the most money you could get. I guess I would be reluctant to go down the road of the auction. I think we need to have a little more control over making sure this water gets to where we think the most need is to solve the most problems in the Treasure Valley and elsewhere that this water may be utilized.
Oh, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Parker.
When we started this process, one of the things that the legislature, at least I understood the legislature wanted us to do, was to take the money that we got from this and put it back into the coffers so that there would be money available for future projects. And so the idea that we don't need to maximize the return is, I mean, it's technically true. There's nothing in the Constitution that requires us to do that, but I think we had some kind of indication from the legislature when we started this process that they wanted us to get money back so that we would then have money to be available for other uses. And as far as the methodology, I don't know why you can't set up an RFP or a proposal like we do for the flood grants, for example, where people would say, well, here's what we're willing to do, and we're willing to pay X. And what they're willing to pay is an important factor in the decision to award the contract to that person. So you don't eliminate cost at all necessarily. I mean, you can say we refuse, we don't care what you're going to pay for it, but I can't imagine we do that. So it would be part of the factors that would be taken into consideration. So I think I'm with Jeff on trying to do a outreach and ask people to tell us what they would use it for. Because I'm personally not interested in making water available to somebody else who's just going to turn around and not put it to beneficial use, but speculate on it. I don't think that's an appropriate use of what we've done. I mean, what we got all the money for. It was to respond to problems in the basin, but there are a lot of issues out there, and people need to come and say, what would they do with this water, or what are they willing to rent it for? I like that approach better than just taking out the gavel and saying sold.
So I guess, other questions from the board, or are we, I guess, turning it back to, what's our next step, I guess? I mean, we're not going to rush into anything. We're going to be careful and deliberate and do the very best job we can. And we don't have water for 6 years probably, but we do have a need to start answering some questions. So what do you see as next step, Cynthia and Justin, I guess, to start with?
Before you, Mr. Chairman, if I may, before you all jump into that, I would really like to hear from the community of people in the Boise and I guess Elmore County as well, who are interested in water from this system. How would they propose that we do this? What do they propose would be the best way, recognizing now that we are not allowed to provide spaceholder contracts to them, but we have to provide lease terms. Are you interested in a 5-year term lease, a 10-year term lease, a 20-year term lease? What price are you willing to pay? So what we need to know is what the interest is. Who wants this water, and what are you willing to do to get it? And I'd like to see some kind of communication from the water user community on that before we make any more decisions about what we're going to do. Could very well be everybody out there in the room thinks that the auction is the best way. And if that's the case, we might want to reconsider our decision or our tentative consensus that we want to do a different method.
So Al, are you proposing then that staff prepare some kind of a document that goes out to all interested parties and they start bringing those proposals or applications in?
I think that would be, Mr. Chairman, sorry. I think that would be premature. I think what would be best is to people here and thousands of people online who are listening, we should ask them for comments on what they've seen and heard today. We could put something out on the website and say comments are due within whatever an appropriate period of time is, and we can then convene another meeting to review what the people, as opposed to what the board thinks.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff. I think we've got time. I mean, best case scenario, we're 5 years away, maybe 6 years away from having space. And then that space has to fill before there's water available. So I think we've got some time. I think we need to continue the dialogue with the prospective water users to see what they think, as Al has indicated. The other thing I really liked what Al said is that we look at the criteria, we look at what the need is by a specific water user or group of water users, and we factor in that need and analyze what an appropriate price for that need is, and come back with some pricing based on the input that we get from people over the next little while. I think people want to know that we're working towards a plan of how we're going to allocate this space and what the opportunity might be. I don't think anybody we have to have an absolute final plan in place on the short term.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mark.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. Along the thoughts and comments Al expressed, that's kind of where I was trying to go with the comment about we're not charged with maximizing return on this investment. That there may be needs out there that we have to weigh as a board and decide what is the overall best use of this water for the entire state of Idaho. So I think the auction may yield the most. I don't know if it does or doesn't, but I think that doesn't necessarily have to drive our decision on how to return the most on this investment.
So to me, the question is going to be, how are we going to get this public input? How are we going to get that communication from the interested parties on how much water they want, how long they want it for, and price ranges.
So, Mr. Chairman, actually getting to that very point, staff have put together an updated survey that we'd be happy to send out. It does have a lot of questions that, based on what we're finding, would apply to any method that you picked, but it will also provide ways for the public to provide you all feedback. And so we could get that on our website, I want to say early next week, if that would work for you all. And then we could set a turnaround time on those comments of a couple of weeks.
30 days, I don't know.
30 days.
And Mr. Chairman, I would recommend, we started the idea of how to go about allocating space. We did have outreach, contact with people who said they were interested. I'd like to make sure that those people who said they were interested get notice that this is out there, that they don't have to go searching through the website to find it. If we already know they've expressed interest, we should let them know that there's a new process going.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Parker, what I can do is, as I get that website or get the survey up to the website, I'll also make sure to send it out to the contact list we have that we had used for this public meeting. It's about 190 different email addresses. So we'll get it out there.
90, so that's like a tenth of an acre of fill a piece.
Right. Well,
This is Jeff, Mr. Chairman. We might even want to give them 60 days to respond. There's a lot of things out there that people are going to want to consider and think about. Maybe there's groups that we haven't even thought of. I know there's people in the lower Boise who are concerned about the returns to the river from the drain system. There may be a new demand there that for some additional water because of lower returns from the drains. That's just one example. And the other thing I guess maybe we factor into this analysis at some point is what's the best economic value for the state? Maybe it isn't securing the highest lease rate on the space, but it's what's how much of an economic driver is it, and what's the total economic return to the state? Not just what value do we put on an acre foot of space.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think building on this discussion about a survey concept, what we might do is, I know Justin's put together a number of questions based on kind of feedback we've gotten in these kinds of meetings. We may circulate that to the storage committee members just to get and make sure that we're capturing any questions that you have in mind. But I know from previous correspondence with interested parties, certainly the timing for when the water's available and the limitations that different entities may face in terms of being able to incur debt and the process they need to go through in order to determine whether they can participate in some sort of a contracting or bidding process is probably part of what they may be thinking about. So we want to make sure that they have an opportunity through this communication to give us a sense of those types of issues as well.
So, Mr. Chairman, Cynthia, that was back when that concern about being able to finance it was back when they thought they were going to have to pay money upfront for space holder contracts. We can't do that anymore. We've got to do leases, which I would assume we're not going to require the lease payments to be made all upfront. It would be over the term of the lease. So I think that would probably alleviate some of those concerns. Doesn't alleviate the concern that you don't have a space holder contract anymore, but it should alleviate the concern about having to front load the costs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So everybody good with where we are on that topic and ready to move on to other items, or somebody still have a burning question out there or an idea? Okay, proceed with what Al said. And we're on to other items. So does anybody on the board have another item for the storage committee?
Mr. Chairman, I'm good. Good work, staff.
Yes. And are we going to need another storage committee meeting prior to the board meetings in end of the month, or we're good? But a finance committee might be scheduled, or is one already?
Well, there's a finance committee scheduled already for next week. Given that tight turnaround, I'm not sure we could put could we put the Anderson Ranch agenda on the finance committee for next week?
I might suggest that we ask reclamation that in a different setting, see what their timeline is, but.
No, I think that that agenda is already pretty much set. So we may add a finance committee meeting, perhaps the week of the board meeting, the last week in March. My initial thought is maybe Thursday afternoon of that week.
So, Mr. Chairman, Brian, if we're waiting for comments,
Mhm.
Wouldn't it be better to get the comments first and then have a finance committee meeting before the board meeting in July?
Well, I think Mr. Chairman, Mr. Barker, the finance committee's charge was to figure out how to arrange the board's finances to pay for the gap that we now have. I think that can be done at any time the finance committee's ready, and anytime reclamation's ready to work with us on that. The storage committee's charge is then to, as you said, consider those comments from potential water users in and around the Treasure Valley area. And for that one, I do believe we should wait until that whatever that 30 or 60-day clock we're talking about runs.
I was just trying to save Ms. Cole-Hansen extra for, finance committee meeting, but I'm sure she'll be more than happy to have two.
She
Brian?
smiled.
Brian, this is Mark. What day is the finance committee meeting next week?
I believe it is Monday of next week, Mr. Gibbs. To the calendar.
I had it one time, but some way oh, hey, it is. It is 10 o'clock.
Yes,
No, yeah, okay. Is it 10 o'clock, right, Monday?
that's correct.
I don't have it I have it on my calendar, but it doesn't say it's the finance committee. Okay, thank you.
So have we covered other items then? Everybody
So,
happy?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Ms. Cole-Hansen.
just to, so that I understand, the second finance committee meeting would most likely be scheduled the afternoon of March 26th after our work session?
That's Mr. Chairman, Joanne, that's my thinking right now. My staff might convince me otherwise.
And just as a reminder, we may also try to schedule an aquifer stabilization committee
That's right.
meeting. So I think, Mr. Chairman, board members, we have not scheduled a tour for the afternoon on Thursday. So we thought we might take advantage of the time and having you in town to address some other issues. So yeah, there may be some time for both those committee meetings.
Right.
Okay, well, for all of those of you who are in the room or online, I hope we've answered some questions. I know we've raised lots more, but I think you'll see there's a path to get your inputs in, and we will be, we've got time to make sure everybody gets a chance to plead their case for some of this water. And so we'll be in touch on that. And if there's no other items, then I guess motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded that we adjourn the storage committee meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.